Hello and welcome to the 2D side-scrolling kit tutorial series. In this series I'm gonna walk you through the ins and outs of the system and show you how to use, edit and modify the system to suit your needs. Okay, let's get started, shall we? In the bottom left corner you can see the content browser. Here you'll see everything is nicely separated into folders. For now, let's start with the levels folder and load the demo map. Now that the level is loaded, as we can see, it's a basic level made with commercially free public domain assets. It's basically used as a showcase for all our features, coming complete with the mini tutorial series and at least one demonstration of each character feature. To get started on the system now, as you can see, everything is nicely arranged into a folder. Let's go to the blueprints folder. The blueprints contains three subfolders: the main folder, the enumeration folders, and the interface folder. Those are pretty self-explanatory. The interface folder holds the damage handler, which is basically allows everything that does and takes damage to communicate with each other. It's gonna be very useful for us in the future. The enumeration currently contains all the animation states of the players. It can be easily editable. And the main folder contains our main scripts. Now onto the main folder. We're gonna first start working on the player character blueprint class, which is our most important blueprint class in the system and contains a large amount of functionality and various blueprint nodes. The player comes complete with the sprite component, where you can adjust its flipbook animations. As you can see, we have the animation idle, but you can select any flipbook you want. This is very useful in setting the default state of the camera of the character. It also contains our camera system, which is basic at the moment, but more will be added in the future. It also contains our death effects, which gets triggered when the player dies. The player character blueprint doesn't get destroyed when it dies, it just gets replaced with the death effects. The projectile spawn point contains the physical place where the player's ranged projectiles will spawn. The block collision is the collision area. When the player blocks, it can be easily adjusted and edited to encompass more or less of the player. And the shield animation contains a custom shield animation when blocking. For example, you could add a special flipbook that appears, a special effect, anything really. Currently we don't have any because I couldn't really find any suitable for free, but it might be useful for some people. Now moving on to the character movement screen. This is based on the official Unreal 2D side-scrolling characters. Is fully commented, everything has a tooltip, so it's quite easy to figure out what each does. It contains various values for maximum movement speed, jump speed, swim speed, fly speed, mass, acceleration, and so on. But now, the more important part of this blueprint is the custom-made editable variables. Move on to our custom parameters, shall we? First of all, we have the player animation state, which is currently set to is idle. but is easily editable to whatever you want. Next is the maximum number of jumps the player can do before having to land for additional jumps. Basically, if you have 2, the player can double jump. If you have 3, the player can triple jump. If you have 1, the player can do a standard jump. Next is the maximum player health. This, besides giving him the hit points, this also decides how many health indicator he has in the top left corner. As you can immediately see, we're gonna test out the health functionality. So his health is 10 now. So and because of this, he will have 10 health hearts. Let's go to play now. Okay, see on the top left corner he has 10 character hearts. If we're gonna change this to 5, for example, compile it and then press play again, now the number of hearts is set to 5. So this is linked to our maximum health. Let's start on the jump functionality now, shall we? We have our wall jump object class, which is basically the class of object that the player must be colliding with in order for him to wall jump. If we set it to none, for example, then the player should be able to wall jump from any object class. Next is the sprint speed. The sprint speed basically gives you the maximum movement speed when sprinting, and the sprint animation speed is how much the animation should be modified when sprinting. This is the slide speed modifier. This is useful when sliding off walls, for example, but unlike sprint animation speed, the higher this is, the lower he slides. So for example, if it's 1.5, he slides 50% slower than falling. The next objects on our list are the damage objects. First is the damage flash duration, which is how much the player flashes and is invulnerable after taking damage. Here we can set up the is knocked back by damage, which means that the player will be knocked back by the damage source depending on where it came from. Next, let's go to the range projectile class, which is self-explanatory. The melee damage zone class is basically we spawn an object for 1 frame that damages any enemy it hits. So you can replace it with anything you want, with any shape, and it should update accordingly. Wall jump velocity, this is basically, it's different from our normal jump velocity because I wanted you to have a bit of control here. Here we have the background and health offset values, which are basically just the screen coordinate offsets for the health indicators. You can change them and they'll move accordingly from the screen, on the screen, sorry. Here we have our range attack cooldown and our melee attack cooldown and our block cooldown, which are pretty self-explanatory. Next, let's go to the Do Not Modify tab. These are just variables created as temporary variables or as byproducts of the script of the blueprint. And you should not modify them because most of the times nothing will happen. Here is our animation tab, which contains flipbooks for all the animations we currently have in game. They're just easily replaceable. Just select whatever flipbook you'd like and the blueprint does the rest. we have jump max hold time. This makes our jump a bit more dynamic, so you can, if you just press the spacebar, you jump a little, but if you keep it pressed, then you jump a bit more. Now let's go on to the blueprint part of it. Here we have the blueprints that handle the player death. Here is the blueprint that handles the draw health and the draw health background. They're pretty much kind of the same, except a few differences. Here we have our main blueprint, which contains the most of the player-related blueprints. It's fully commented, and it's organized in separate tabs and sub-tabs. It should be quite easy to understand. As I commented it as much as I could, but more comments may be added in the future. This is our big animation switcher. As you can see, it allows us to switch between all our animation states. This is not something you should edit unless you plan to add your own custom animation states to this, which I will show you in a tutorial later on. The system is mostly based on the on-finish animation event, on-finish playing event, which triggers when the flipbooks finish their animation. Of course, sometimes this won't be possible because of fast actions, but we have a fail-safe system in place that allows them to transition to another animation state even if for some reason their animation was interrupted because of player input or collision with an enemy or an object and so on. This concludes the first part of our tutorial system that focused on the player character blueprint. This should give you enough knowledge in order to start working and adapting the blueprints for your own games and adding on top of it, but just in case anything's missing from here, in the next series we'll go through all the other blueprints which are much less complex.